welcome to the Sword and the Rose podcast, where we go down the rabbit hole of truth and love, discovering the mystical and magical things existing around us. I'm your host, Truest Jen, and I'm so excited to have you here with me. Let's jump into it. In 2007, I had what seemed to be a random dream. In this dream, I woke up from another dream, and I was standing in what I thought was Japan. I could see an Asian village in front of me. In the distance ahead was a mountain covered with snow. To my right, a giant pine tree. I looked to the ground and saw I was standing on patches of snow. Pine needles were strewn about. I looked up again at the village in front of me and the mountain in the distance. Why am I here? I wondered. Then I woke up fully, and that was it. I was in my bedroom, no pine tree, no mountain, snow, or Asian village, just me and my familiar room. I didn't analyze the dream. It felt so real, as if I'd really been there. Time passed by, but I never forgot the Japanese dream, as I came to call it. Every once in a while, it would find its way inside my thoughts, but all I could do was continue to ponder it. I was never able to draw any real meaning. Then years later, in 2010, I seriously started my writing projects. Given the opportunity for a pen name, I started experimenting with different names and creative spellings. I decided to keep my name for the time being, but change the way it was spelled. Instead of spelling my last name Audrey, the way it's actually spelled, I thought maybe changing it to the traditional spelling of Audrey, Audrey, would be a bit better, or at least easier. Since I seemed to be the only Jen Audrey with the original spelling that I knew of at the time, I wondered if Jen Audrey with the traditional spelling would be any more common. I typed the new spelling into a Facebook search and found hundreds of people. At the very top of the list was a little girl named Jennifer Audrey, maybe 6 or 7 years old, living in Indonesia and sitting in front of a nature scene. It caught my attention instantly, so I clicked on her page to see it a little closer. What I'm about to show you and tell you is shocking. Maybe not for you, but it was for me. Jennifer Audrey, a little girl in Indonesia, was sitting in front of a nature scene just like I'd seen in my dream. For a stretch of seconds, I sat paralyzed while my mind tried to comprehend what I was seeing. Then my jaw dropped in astonishment, and the word, "What?" came out of my mouth. I tried to search for a logical explanation, but my inner knowingness caught up with me. Somehow, I was connected to Jennifer Audrey across the world, while I, Jennifer Audrey, had been asleep. How could that be? Though the picture looks the same, in my dream it wasn't a picture, it was a place. And while the little girl lived in Indonesia, I felt sure I was in Japan. There were some obvious gaps, but the similarities were so striking they couldn't be ignored. Are you ready for the next part? That's right, there's more. In July 2011, my friends and I used a deck of fairy oracle cards. If you aren't familiar, it's basically a deck of cards with messages that offer guidance. There are many, many types of decks from many different artists and authors. First, you set the space with sacred intention and protection to keep the energy clear and at the highest level. You can shuffle the deck with a specific question in mind, or you can be open to any sort of divine guidance you might need to know. The premise is the cards will always reveal the message that is meant for you. There can be some caveats and things to be aware of when using them, but it's basically true. I've worked with oracle cards often, and they've been accurate and useful many times. As my friends and I worked with this deck of fairy cards, a certain card came to the surface. Quite honestly, I don't remember if it was my card or if it was one of my friends' cards. I just remember seeing it at some point, being astonished by it, and my friend whose deck it is telling me I must keep the card as clearly it's a sign of destiny. So I've kept the card ever since. It's from Doreen Virtue's Healing with the Fairies Oracle deck. When I saw the card, I was instantly reminded of both my dream and the picture of Jennifer Audrey across the world. There are some variances. For instance, in the card, the mountain in the background is not in the center, but instead it's the side of a mountain situated next to some clouds. Yet you see the pine tree on the right, and there's a ship on the left that appears to me like it's Japanese. There are many other things I'd like you to notice, and I'll go into more detail why in just a moment. But real quick, let's overview all the things. First, the clouds form a shape like Aladdin's lamp. There's a handle on the left, lid in the center, and spout on the right. There's a ship on the left of the card. The woman is holding a snake. She has butterfly wings, and she's wearing a Grecian dress. There appears to be an ET in the clouds, all the way on the left, with an oval-shaped head, huge bug eyes, and a narrow neck. It looks like the sea is swirling, and there's a banner that says, "Problem resolved." Each has a very special significance. First, the white clouds. I think most people will associate Aladdin's lamp with a genie granting wishes. So when I see the clouds forming a shape like Aladdin's lamp, that's what I think of, wishes. The ship on the left. The ship looked Japanese to me. I did a quick search to confirm this and found a couple images that are reminiscent. After sharing this card with a friend of mine, though, she felt the ship looked more Grecian, like the ship of Odysseus. The synopsis of the Odyssey and Odysseus's journey is one of hardship and turmoil turned happily ever after. He overcame the obstacles that crippled him, and with the help of the gods, peace was restored to his land and all was good again. That theme coincides with the problem resolved messaging, also apparent in the card. The fairy girl is holding a serpent. I've actually been working on a book that highlights the significance of the serpent, specifically the 13th zodiac sign, Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, the man harnessing a snake. In January 2011, the Minnesota astronomy team announced there are actually 13 zodiac aligned with the ecliptic plane, rather than just the 12 zodiac we're readily familiar with. The meaning of the sign of Ophiuchus is to tame the energy of the snake, transforming its poison into medicine. It's also related to the rod of Asclepius, a serpent-entwined staff used as a medical symbol. Not to be confused with the caduceus, which it often is, the caduceus having two snakes and representing commerce. I've been so interested in snake-related things ever since awareness of Ophiuchus resurfaced. I say resurfaced because ancient astrologers and alchemists were aware of Ophiuchus. There's a great deal of symbology circulating around the snake in nearly every culture. I hold the snake in respect, feeling it offers a paramount importance to us all. Many of us have been taught to fear the snake, but that's merely one interpretation, and if that's the only way it's viewed, so much value is lost. Does it seem to you the fairy girl is perhaps like the serpent bearer herself? The butterfly wings. Just before I came across this fairy card with my friends, I'd written on social media that I wanted to quit being the caterpillar crawling my way along and just be the butterfly already. As my friend Maya so beautifully says, drawing on her expertise as a biologist, the snake and the butterfly are both symbols of intense metamorphosis. The butterfly represents one major change in a lifetime. The snake represents many constant, uncomfortable, sometimes painful changes. Over the years, it's been necessary to continually change. Change is the only constant. But the one major change in a lifetime, I believe, is the opportunity we have for ascension, to experience the transcendence of the physical through a higher frequency. It should be noted that snakes eat butterflies. What I think is represented in this card is standing in your power to face your fear, thereby overcoming it. The fairy girl is wearing a Grecian-style dress. I have always felt a strong tie to Greece, mostly because I had my first birthday when I lived there. Shortly after Chernobyl happened, livestock was banned throughout Europe due to contamination. My dad worked for a company exporting New Zealand beef, so we were stationed in Athens as he was tasked with bringing in a supply of beef to the badly damaged market. We were there very temporarily as it was a politically hostile time. Terrorists were frequently targeting Americans, and my mother had to check in with the embassy every day. But beyond my personal connection, Greece is pretty central to the entirety of Western civilization, or at least the birth of it. The same book I've been working on that overviews Ophiuchus the serpent bearer actually came about because I was hiking a pyramid-shaped mountain in Phoenix, Arizona that had quartz at the top of it. And when I picked up a piece of quartz, I had a spontaneous thought that seemed to instantly download into my awareness. When I looked out over the valley, I realized with complete certainty that the valley had been many things over time. It's a desert now, but it was once a forest and a seabed floor before that. I found petrified wood also atop the mountain, and it turns out there is one of the largest petrified forests in the northeastern corner of Arizona. I hadn't thought of the geographical history before that, but in that moment, I was certain of it. Immediately following that thought, I had another thought that had not occurred to me before, which was a transference of information from Egypt to Greece had been distorted, and Western civilization had been built upon it ever since. That's interesting, I thought to myself, but is it true? I set out to the library on a research quest to try and prove it. The book I'm writing is about that and what I discovered along the way. I'm pleased and grateful to tell you I did find the evidence, and yes, it's true. It's about our conceptualization of time, what we are capable of as humans, and our connection to the universe. So when I look at this fairy card and notice there's a Greek essence, that's what comes to mind for me. The fairy girl. I asked the friends I was with when the fairy card was drawn whether they saw any resemblance between me and the girl in the card, and each of them said yes, especially in the eyes. She does have blue eyes, like I do. Every person to see this card so far has agreed, sometimes even mentioning it before I do. She does seem to look remarkably like me, or maybe me like her. The girl in the card also looks like the actor formerly known as Ellen Page in the movie Inception. When I came across the card, I hadn't seen the movie yet. I was deliberately avoiding it because I was nervous it would freak me out, based on my already eerie dream experiences. Eventually, I gave in out of curiosity. One of the first things I noticed is that the movie starts out in Japan. The very first scene is of the main character, Leonardo DiCaprio, laying on the shore of Japan. How interesting. The premise of the movie is about accessing dreams and building out realities within them, the blurring between dreams and reality. Inception is also about a global energy monopoly and breaking down the energy empire for the greater good of the people. Also interesting. Again, to mention Greece and my brief time there because of Chernobyl, I felt strongly tied to nuclear energy and how we use energy on this planet. A life theme and passion of mine, you could say. I believe part of our destiny as a collective humanity is to quit using unnecessary forms of energy that cause so much destruction in the sourcing and/or using of energy to meet our needs. I don't think that the majority of proposed ideas or green taxes are the solutions either. I believe Nikola Tesla already provided the roadmap to the efficient harnessing of energy and how to use it effectively, but that information has been hoarded and hidden away from the public because it would lead to liberation, and those who profit off controlling and limiting us don't want that to end. At some point, though, hopefully sooner than later, it must end. An ET in the clouds. I am quite sure there is an ET face in the left corner of the card. It looks like the epitome of traditionally depicted ETs as we see them represented in the media: the round head, narrow neck, and big round eyes. I used to say the only things that frighten me are spiders, the ocean, and aliens. I've since learned a lot about aliens, which apparently prefer to be called extraterrestrials more than aliens. I explain a lot more about this in my book, which is soon coming, but for now, suffice to say that my life radically changed when a strange woman from New Mexico showed up one day at the spa I was working at. She had in her hands a giant crystal and said she was told to visit our spa and that the owner may be interested in the crystal. It turns out that Elizabeth, the spa owner, was very interested and welcomed Sahara to stay a while and to work with us. Little did I know that after meeting her, my life would never be the same. Sahara, the strange woman, is a sound healer, among other things, and had crystal singing bowls with her as well. That day, we experienced a sound healing session, my first ever, and it was an incredible experience. Another story for another time, but to give you the cliff notes, she said the sound frequency helps align our cells into perfect balance, restoring health and harmony in the body and in our energy. That night, after her sound healing session, I had a dream where I could visibly see that happening within me. I saw shapes and colors moving into geometric patterns. It's the only time I've had a dream like that. I also want to mention, theories are suggesting the pyramids of Egypt were built not with human slaves, but with sound. Sahara would go on to work with us for a few months before her trajectory suddenly changed again. Shortly after she first arrived, about a couple weeks after working together, we were sitting on a bench outside in front of the spa when she turned to me and out of nowhere asked, "What do you know about extraterrestrials, Jen?" And I told her, "Not much of anything, really." She smiled and asked if I would be open to hearing some things that she had to share. I'm always interested in information, even if it makes me uncomfortable, so I agreed to listen. The interesting thing about fear is that it usually stems from a lack of understanding. Well, dear listener, would you be surprised to hear that today I am no longer afraid of aliens? Extraterrestrials, to be galactically correct. As it turns out, Sahara was trained in forensic science by Dr. Stephen Greer, one of the foremost experts on ETs. If you watch any documentaries or executive briefings about the subject, you're likely to encounter him. Sahara's job was to scientifically prove explanations for unidentified areas of interest using forensic testing. Only after all methods have been exhausted and there are no rational explanations reached, then something is deemed unidentified, but not before. At least not officially. It does happen though. There are official unidentified areas and objects. Not all the time with all sightings, but they occur. Now that it's 2024 and ETs are coming up more frequently, we need to highlight Project Bluebeam and understand there are organizations using technology to freak people out. Those are not real. This is not the same thing. It's neither all reports of aliens are real or all claims of ETs are fake. There's an in-between, and people like Sahara are professionally trained by people in the field of science to determine the difference. Sahara was also trained by Professor John Mack from the Harvard School of Psychology, and her work there with him was to counsel abductees. Moment of pause here for suspense because what in the what? It's true. All of this is entirely true. More people claim to be abducted than actually are, whether it's an attempt at attention or a bout of delusion. But there are those who have truly been abducted, according to Sahara. There's a very specific pattern that all abductees share. She says abductions stopped, as far as she is aware, around 2011, because the contract that was made between the ETs and the government that allowed it was breached. She said only one species of ETs did abductions, the Greys, because they had devolved and could no longer reproduce on their own, so they abducted humans to experiment on a hybridized reproduction program. In exchange for allowing the abductions, the government was given advanced technologies, and that's supposedly how the stealth fighter craft suddenly came on scene. But the agreement and the allowance had supposedly ceased due to a disagreement amongst them, and Sahara believed abductions were no longer occurring. Just to quickly clarify the notion that the Greys had devolved, supposedly they're a very intelligent race, but they have no compassion. It's all head and no heart, and without the two together, they're not able to reach that advanced state of being. So while they have a lot of intelligence, they can't actually create or reproduce, which is a form of creation, because without heart, they're not connected to source. They're in the illusion of separation. Just after I learned about all of this from Sahara, I went into my favorite tea shop in downtown Phoenix that I had visited several times before. The owner, who was very sweet and friendly and who I had spoken with many times, asked me what I was up to that day when I came in. "I'm working on writing one of my book chapters," I told her. She was very curious and asked me what it was about. Since I'm very honest and straightforward, I didn't hesitate to tell her that it was about extraterrestrials. She paused and appeared to freeze, looking at me like a deer in the headlights, wide-eyed, and I swear she also went pale. After a moment, she said to me, "Jen, I don't ever tell anyone this because they always think I'm crazy, but I trust you and I think you'll believe me. I'm sure that I was abducted and that it happened more than once." Did you know that's one of the very specific patterns of abduction? That it usually happens multiple times to the same person. They usually come from a family, and the spouse usually doesn't believe them, which leads to family counseling that Sahara often facilitated. Wow! Yes, of course I believe you. Oh my goodness, wow. I was astonished, but I did believe her. She went on to tell me more about her experience, which matched with more of the patterning that Sahara had briefed me about. So that experience was very confirming for me. Sometimes, oftentimes, I feel like I'm standing in a fire hose of synchronicity. One of the main things I've learned about extraterrestrials is that almost all of them are benevolent and they don't harm humans. They usually work behind the scenes to assist humans, especially when it comes to nuclear things. They've supposedly done a lot of cleanup and prevention when it comes to nuclear technologies on this planet. They take a particular interest because when it comes to nuclear technology, what happens on this planet has a direct effect that ripples throughout our galaxy and much of the universe, maybe all of the universe. So they have a vested interest and are granted special permissions to intervene, which they otherwise are strictly prohibited from doing. It's the nature of nuclear technology because the way that it behaves has a bigger impact than can really be conceptualized. They are there around us to assist us, but they won't do things for us. That's a very strong message that's frequently reiterated. They cannot save us. They cannot make the changes on this planet that we've been wanting to make, and they can't take us away. We have a mission as humanity at this time on Earth to reclaim our sovereignty. We do that by stepping into our power, creating the difference we wish to see. They will encourage us, but they won't and can't do it for us. However, once we make the choice that we want the changes, they can assist us. We first have to welcome it. They can't interject it on our behalf without our consent. They are also said to frequently disguise themselves in the clouds, which is how they make themselves visible to those who are ready and willing to see them, a way of being seen without being seen. That is for sure what I think is showing up in this fairy card. The sea. There is what looks like a swirling pattern in the sea. Years ago, I was very passionate about researching and sharing awareness of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, also known as the Eighth Continent. If you aren't yet familiar, it is the world's trash combined together in the Pacific Ocean. There are gyres or currents that collect trash and particles from all of the world's waterways and swirl it together into a giant mass. There is now one in the Atlantic as well, multiple. There was a time when I was totally dedicated to spreading awareness on the subject. I'm happy to see that many people are now already aware of it. It's been reported in Discover magazine, on major news outlets and talk shows, so the word is getting out. The problem is that it's exponentiated. It's multiplied. It's grown and gotten worse. So, while we're aware of it, we have to also do something to change it. I don't know about everywhere else in the world, but where I live, the government's solution was to sub out plastic straws with paper straws. And I have to be honest, that's not going to cut it. My big question is, how is trash ending up in the ocean to begin with? Why is trash in the waterways? Why is trash not being taken care of? Why is it not in a landfill? And why is it not being transformed into a different form of energy? Those methodologies are available. There are places that utilize it. So why is this not a standard? And why are we doing things like removing plastic straws when plastic straws are only a small portion of the pollution? There's cigarette butts, there's plastic bags, there's all kinds of things, endless things. So we have a lot of work to do, and we need to actually make a measurable impact on taking care of it. We need to implement solutions that actually do something to resolve it. That swirling patch of water on the left of the card reminds me of a gyre, a sea current, like the ones that have been collecting the world's trash. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch and the Great Atlantic Patch now as well pose one of the greatest threats to our oceans. Besides the spilled oil mass the size of Mount Everest, sitting subsurface in the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean region, and the leaking of radiation around Fukushima, Japan, and now also the toxic runoff from Lahaina, just to name a few, there's no shortage of problems with our oceans. I still felt drawn back to the significance of Japan. Why Japan? What about it? I recalled that in my dream, I was looking at a mountain in the distance while standing in a village I felt was Japanese. I looked at the fairy card again and what looks like the side of a mountain in the distance. I wondered, could this fairy card be related to Mount Fuji? Other than artwork, I could not recall ever seeing a picture of what Mount Fuji looked like. So once again, I turned to the internet to help me in my quest to find more information. As I went to search images of Mount Fuji, I continued my wondering. Is it possible the mountain with a pine tree on the right, as shown in the fairy card, is captured in a real picture of a real place? Perhaps even of Mount Fuji? Could that exist? And if it does, will I even find it? I typed Mount Fuji into the search browser, then clicked on images. Immediately, I found exactly what I hoped for. I didn't even have to scroll through to find it. It was at the top of the search results. There it was, a picture looking nearly identical to the fairy card in my hand. The caption below it read, Mount Fuji towers over Gotemba, Japan, as viewed from road to Hakone Park, September 2000. Then it continues. Click to next picture or click for pictures of monarch butterflies at El Rosario Sanctuary, Michoacan, Mexico. The caption describes both the mountain scene as Mount Fuji and also mentions monarch butterflies. I looked at the fairy card in my hand and saw the butterfly wings. Again, I was paralyzed for a moment as I considered the possibility of another connection. Moments later, I clicked on the link to El Rosario Sanctuary in Mexico to see what monarch butterflies look like and if it might match the butterfly wings in the fairy card. The picture that came up was as follows. Well, the picture wasn't clear enough for me. It looked like a lot of orange blips on trees. I still wasn't sure what a monarch butterfly looked like, so I turned to the ever-reliable internet once more. I typed in monarch butterfly, then clicked on images. This is one of many similar-looking images that filled the search results. Of course it's the same butterfly as the one in the fairy card. So by simply wondering if Mount Fuji was somehow involved in all of this, and searching for images of Mount Fuji, I found a real website that revealed nearly the same exact scene existing in real life that matches the fairy card drawing, and the same exact butterfly that's in the fairy card directly below the real scene of Mount Fuji. The synchronicity is mind-blowing. So what do we do with it? Whenever animals or insects of any kind make a special appearance in my life, I follow the native tradition that considers the encounter as having significance and meaning, a totem as they refer to it. Once again, what a perk of having the internet. I just type in the name of the organism and follow it up with animal totem. Yes, even for insects. I found that more information is available when you use the term specifically animal totem. So in this case, I typed in monarch butterfly animal totem. Then I peruse through the results and find what feels most relevant for me. I found the following explanation to be the most comprehensive. All butterflies and moths teach the power of transformation, and their presence in your life can be extremely empowering. They teach people how to proactively seize their own individual opportunities for growth and metamorphosis. At this time, you have great opportunity for phenomenal internal and external changes and transformations. Monarch butterfly particularly signals a time for personal change and internal change, emphasizing changes of perspective and how we perceive our place in the world and our contentment within it. Yes, I like that. Especially because I've learned an abundance of useful information, but there is one truth that stands out above all others. Working on ourselves first affects everything else around us. So, if we want to change the world, in my case, I want us to experience true harmony, then I must achieve true harmony within myself. As above, so below. As within, so without. Or, as stated by Lao Tzu, if you want to awaken all of humanity, then awaken all of yourself. If you want to eliminate the suffering in the world, then eliminate all that is dark and negative in yourself. Truly, the greatest gift you have to give is that of your own self-transformation. I met with a friend to discuss these mind-boggling discoveries and developments. I was interested in their insight. As I showed them the fairy card, the scene of Mount Fuji, and the monarch butterfly, I asked them what they thought it meant. They replied with the wisdom of a sage. It is what it means to you. Clearly, you're creating this. The answer is within you. They had also been receiving many messages about the monarch butterfly around that same time. Less than a week after our meeting, they came across a related post on Facebook by Tide and Rain showing the image of what is still, to this day, the largest crop circle to ever appear, depicting a human with butterfly wings. The crop circle appeared in Holland on August 9, 2009. The caption states, "Human consciousness is evolving. The body of our collective caterpillar is breaking down as the new imaginal cells of the butterfly begin to appear in greater and greater numbers. As in the body of the caterpillar, the butterfly to be, the immune system does not recognize these imaginal cells as self, so it attacks them. This is exactly what is happening throughout our society now. There comes a point, though, when so many of these imaginal cells appear and begin to connect with each other that the immune system of the caterpillar is overwhelmed and the butterfly is born. What we are to become is being born in the midst of the dissolution of what presently exists, and what we are to become will take our collective breath away." I am very aware that the monarch butterfly image from the El Rosario Sanctuary showed many monarch butterflies as blips of orange in the forest. They come together in great number. There's an important metaphor in that. I recently went back to the data of this crop circle, trying to understand more about any messages that may be in it. The wings look like DNA to me, and while I wasn't able to confirm it, crop circles rarely come with specific decodes, what I did find twirled my mind around. Apparently, some humans tried to claim they created the crop circle. I can assure you they didn't. True crop circles are made with extraordinary precision. They're always near a water source, and they have a measurable electromagnetic field. I've researched crop circles and the supposed hoax claims. Crop circles that have been caught on camera appear in the flash of light, not the many hours it would take humans with tools to create. Media often pushes the narrative that a group of humans created them, but that's never been proved, although when humans are contracted to do crop circles, the end result is very obviously made by humans. They do not have the same precision or electromagnetic measure, and they do not appear in an instant. It takes them several hours or days. But the humans that tried to claim the crop circle said it was one of their projects, Project Atlas. This is the fun part. For 13 years, I've been working on my book, the one about Ophiuchus, Greece, ETs, and other things, which I've titled, all along, I Am My Own Atlas. I've always been sure about the title. It was originally created to mean I find my own way by noticing the signs around me. It's evolved to include many meanings as the layers have and continue to unfold in surprising ways. We've been living in a world based on intellect so primarily. We're taught only to believe in what is tangible around us rather than in the possibility we are connected to an intelligence far beyond us, which we are a part of, and that we can tap into and synchronize with. While five-sense, evidence-based intellect serves a place and purpose, it is not the be-all, end-all, and to revere it as so is extremely limiting. I'll believe it when I see it is a funny statement by itself because we only see 3% of what's actually around us, due to the visible light spectrum being only a fraction of the totality. Truthfully, we have a lot of evidence to show us there is more, but it's been dismissed and denied and buried by authorities and the industry of science pretty rigorously for quite some time, effectively keeping us unaware of ourselves and believing in a limited reality that excludes so much existing beyond what we think we know. Everything in this bizarre unfolding, from the fairy card to the little girl with the same name as me to the peculiar dream in Japan that started all of it, everything ties together effortlessly. What does it mean? To me, it means I am myself, Jen Audrey, uniquely me as no one else is the same as me, but I'm also connected to everyone simultaneously. That is the oneness of everything. That's how I unknowingly, unintentionally tapped into the life of Jennifer Audrey on the other side of the world. As for the fairy card, there seems to be several symbols coming forth that relate directly to the book I've been working on, and there appears to be some intrinsic link to Japan. When this first began unfolding, it was shortly after the earthquake and tsunami that destroyed Fukushima. Aladdin's lamp represents what do you wish? Since I'm experiencing this extraordinary unfolding of synchronicity, I really focused on what do I wish? Without question, I wish for harmony on this planet. I'm very well versed on the concept of duality, i.e., there can't be good without bad, you must experience pain to know pleasure, etc. However, I think many of the atrocities we see and experience, like fear-based living, planet polluting, tyranny, nuclear disasters, so on and so forth, are totally unnecessary. I believe we can transcend duality and that we are. To transcend it, we don't bypass it or ignore it. We see things for what they are, we feel what we feel, and allow that feeling, give it the space to process. Processing gives way to releasing. When we let it move through instead of suppressing it, we facilitate an integration or transmutation and can rise above it instead of becoming stuck in it. In this way, we can authentically rise into a better state of being without having to stay in misery. It's important to note that we may have to do this multiple times for the same thing. You may find yourself, as I have, wondering why you are moving through feelings you thought you already moved through before. Consider it like the journey of a snake, shedding layer after layer after layer. Keep shedding, it is making a difference. Problem resolved. I've learned so much about the beauty of the phrase, ask and you shall receive. This fairy card reassures me that my wish is granted. The problems between harmony and our current reality are already solved. It's already in the field, we're just working on aligning with it, and when we match the frequency, it will be our reality. I highly, highly recommend Z Earth Star's Oracle Healing Sound Chambers, free on YouTube, to help clear your energy field and restore protection. It's helpful with anxiety and depression especially. We can accumulate energy from jarring or upsetting experiences or from those around us without even realizing it. And it can stay stuck in our field and weigh us down, interfering with the manifestation of our desires. Z's sound chambers are made with harmonic frequencies and healing codes that purge unwanted energy and balance our own energy. I've found them instrumentally helpful for myself. Her videos are shared on my blog for this episode, which you can find at TheSwordandTheRose.site. On a global scale and individually, we already have solutions to most of our problems. Really, we do. All it takes is a shift in our perspective, for us to stop thinking we are insignificant and helpless, to step out of looking at the problem with hopelessness, overwhelm, and anxiety, to know there are solutions, we are abundant with them, and we have the ability to be supported by them. Our job is to believe they are possible. This puts us in a place to receive them. If you don't feel that and can't imagine it, clear your field. There can be stuck energy influencing a lower frequency. We might be caught up in conditioned thinking and inefficient systems pandering to market monopolies, but it's our choice whether we let it continue or do something to change it. We are reminded by guides such as Lao Tzu that change comes from within us. We don't need to wait for external changes. We can foster change within us. That is the source of our creative power. Now, there will be problems because problems lead to solving. There's a growth process, but many of the problems that we experience on this planet have been stunted and we haven't been able to get beyond them, even though the solutions are there waiting for us. That's why we have to tap into the place within us to align with the solution. The imaginal cells of the caterpillar breaking down into liquefied goo that transforms into new cells of an entirely different being echoes the importance of imagination. Envisioning what is not yet before you, but which can be brought into existence through you. Einstein himself said, imagination is more important than knowledge. This fairy card reassures me that there is resolution to our problems and we are capable of it. Not only are we capable, but we've already achieved it. That's the connotation of the phrase problem resolved. It does not say problem might be resolved or problem could be resolved. It simply says problem resolved. The specific interpretation from the author, Doreen Virtue, who created the fairy card, states, problem resolved. An issue that has been bothering you is being healed behind the scenes. The solution is creative, ingenious, and is a joyous surprise for you. You are on the cusp of experiencing welcome relief from a problem that has been bothering you. The fairies want you to know that you have reason to smile, as heaven is working on a solution that is so creative you will chuckle with delight at God's sense of humor. Basically, it's a win-win for everyone. Please do not strain to figure out how the solution will be achieved or in what form it will manifest. Instead, let yourself enjoy feelings of excitement and gratitude as you allow heaven to help you. Affirmation: I ask that all effects of mistakes and misunderstandings be undone, both in the past and the present. When you start exploring the concept of time and realize it's not linear as we've been taught and as it has been repeatedly reinforced in the reality around us, time is permeable and the future exists simultaneously with the past. What we choose in the present, primarily our perspective, comprised of belief and feeling or emotion, navigates which timeline we align with and the outcome that we experience. There's realities beyond what we have been led to believe, already existing, waiting for us to see. I feel it on every level, including in my sleep. It feels like our destiny. I'm choosing it. Are you? Thanks for taking the time to listen to this podcast. If you found it beneficial, please like and share with others. I hope to have you back for the next episode. Be well, and be sure to check out the blog update for this episode on TheSwordandTheRose.site, where I share a few amazing videos that go more in depth on what the field is and how we can align with it to be conscious creators manifesting our desired realities rather than running on autopilot, perpetuating fear paradigms. It's time now and safe for us to step out of the programming and step into our power.